Hello and welcome, emotional warriors, to the podcast today. I have with me David Greenwalt, and he is a certified health coach and founder of the Leanness Fitness University. He's been doing this work with men and women since 1987 and is a master of this and has a tremendous amount of knowledge that I think will be really fun for us to dive into as far as we connect in this, and this is the new year. People are focusing on their body. This is a good time to do this work and educate yourself, because everybody collectively is a little bit thinking about this and what's right for them to start. So I wanted to bring him on and share this information with you, but we're also going to be tying it in with something that he specifically works towards, which is the emotional fitness of his clients. And as everyone knows on this podcast, I really take seriously the mind-body connection, whether that is through somatization, which is the physical, emotional connection, like your body can actually hold and store and be an expression of emotion. So can stress, that he will be able to address that, plus physical fitness itself and weight and how that starts to affect us. So let's welcome David, and I want him to introduce himself and tell us a little bit about how he got started in this and why this is his passion.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's really, really great to be here. So yeah, I'm excited to share. So yeah, David Greenwalt, and I've been doing this, for a few decades now, and I love it. I'd say I'm more passionate today than I was when I was in my early 30s and doing it, because I just have so much more experience and so much to share. And I feel so actually more hopeful now because of what I know and because of the experience and what I'm seeing with clients in the real world than even when I was in my 30s and just getting started with this. But I was a police officer in a past life. I was a city police officer. I was an Illinois state trooper. And
nice. Thank you.
During that period, I had started another fitness company that I started in a little room in the house. And the goal of that fitness company was to just make enough money to pay for my own protein powder that I was taking, because I was a bodybuilder and powerlifter and that kind of thing in my 20s and 30s. And so I'm in my 20s at this point, and I started this company. And anyway, lo and behold, as big a surprise to me as it was anybody, over about a 5-year period, it grew into 5 million in revenue and 45 employees, and I was still a trooper. And
wow.
so
Amazing.
So, I know, trust me, that's how I felt too. I didn't have any real business background or anybody around me that had been in business, but anyway, the internet had just come in. I had a lot of customers from this other fitness company that wasn't related to transformation. It was related to supplements. And I don't sell any supplements now, but I'll tell that in a second. But when email first came in, I had people asking me, because they knew I had done bodybuilding. They knew I'd done powerlifting. They knew I had to get really lean for bodybuilding. I'd bulk up for powerlifting, get lean, bulk up, all this stuff.
Right.
And they knew I had experience because I wrote about it. I wrote a newsletter every month, and I would research supplements. I was doing a real evidence-based approach to all of this stuff. And I wrote about fitness, and I wrote about supplements. And so my clients knew that I had studied it quite a lot, and I was really into it and had shared this with them. Anyway, so they would ask me on an email early on, "Hey, Dave, real quick, it's not a problem at all, no big deal, don't want to be a burden. But if you could just real quick in this email, tell me everything I need to know to lose 30 pounds and keep it off forever."
Yeah.
If you just reply, real quick. And so I tried, and I just realized very quickly that I was doing them a disservice. So that was around 1998. I ended up writing a comprehensive book covering nutrition, exercise, and emotional fitness. And that was about 500 pages. So I really wanted to bring in all the elements that I knew back then.
Wow.
The internet just came in, this amazing thing, two-way communication. Oh my gosh, we can have two-way communication. Now we laugh. We're like, yeah, come on. It's been around. But back then it was new, and I embraced it early on. And we created a coaching program so that people could interact. We could have that two-way communication. We could look at their nutrition and their exercise and goal setting and talk to them, and they could talk to us. And so we did that in 1999, and I can't say long story short, but what I can say is we've been virtually coaching people in this way and just improving the program, but been doing that since 1999.
Right. And that's couple decades.
Yeah.
That has, I mean, so it really, the leanness, the book is called The Leanest
Yeah,
Lifestyle.
it is. Yep.
And I want to say that because I come from a personal training background, exercise science, taught yoga, and also love the nutrition area, like to talk about it, think about it, just research it. But one of the things that I found in that world, which I really appreciate in talking to you before even this, is that how much research you've done and how evidence-based approach you've taken, because there's so much information out there that's just trying to sell you something.
Right.
And it's so difficult with the internet now. Yes, it's a wonderful thing, but to be able to discern what is correct information, what's not, because literally everything has a proponent and somebody
Right.
that's contradicting it. So I really appreciate that. And I think that that's something that, I mean, even if you could share with us where you found certain areas where there's a lot of misinformation,
Yeah.
which is the code word for the day, but
Right.
it's like there is a lot in this world, which I think why it's so important we find people that have done the work, not somebody who's a figurehead for,
Yeah.
or a model, who
Right.
knows?
Right.
So,
Well,
yeah.
I'm a vociferous consumer still of peer-reviewed literature every week, every month. And I'm also still every single day working with people in the trenches every day who are struggling to win this. So have been, will be, plan on continuing to be. I don't want to compare myself to Jack LaLanne. He's an icon and he's passed on now, but he was involved in fitness well into his, 90,
Oh, yeah.
ish. And so if I can keep my brain sharp, that's how I see myself. I have no interest in retiring. I just want to keep helping people and growing in this area. So,
Right.
so
So let's talk about that in some ways, because I think that that's kind of what we see is that we saw health conscious, like people became more health conscious. People started
yeah,
to understand that what they're eating, smoking, drinking, was affecting their body. And now people are understanding stress. But what are you seeing as a trend now
yeah.
that you've worked with people for so long, what they're struggling with?
So, well, let's see. Obesity right now is sitting at 43% of adults in the United States.
That's incredible.
It is. And we were at 15% in 1970. So
Wow.
we're, 2.5 times ish, higher now than we were then. And it's projected to be 50% by 2030.
Mm.
So we're just going in the wrong direction. So what's going on? What's the misinformation? Well, it really ranges. But here's the thing. Messaging from a top down, from the
Mhm.
from government institutions to health related institutions
Yeah.
and so forth, that the messaging hasn't worked. I mean, everything, if you want to look at a food guide pyramid, you want to do a My Healthy Plate, you want to do the latest thing that they've got going on. It's not that that information is bad necessarily or inherently bad, but the messaging of it isn't working. And the other thing is that you've got a few things going on if we're looking at the top down. We've got a tremendous amount of money that it infiltrates every single part of it, from the big food producers that are really, it's very important to them that they have, strong profits. They're very motivated, of course, by that. And I would say that is the primary motivator, barring something that they would know inherently is harmful, but profit is the biggest motivator. So there's money there. There's money at the government level. There's money in the American Academy of Dietetics.
Mhm.
They're sponsored by big food. They're invested in big food. Big food has big lobbyists. Big lobbyists control politicians and political agendas and laws that relate to it. And so with that being said, there's been this message for 50 some years of all things in moderation,
Mhm.
and that food is food, just as long as it's just all things in moderation. But the reality is that about 60 to 90% of what adults consume in the United States is ultra processed food.
Right.
60
Okay.
to 90%. And that ultra processed food almost didn't exist 70, 80 years ago. I mean,
Mhm.
there was a little bit. There might have been, some Kellogg's products and a few things back then, but most of the stuff that we ate for hundreds of thousands of years, up to maybe 100 or so years ago, was what we would now have to say today is real food, or as our great grandparents called it, food.
Yeah.
Um, so what's going on? Well, you've got just the nature of the system that we're all living in, being, a capitalistic, society where
Mhm.
profit. And I'm not saying that to say that's evil, that's bad. I'm just saying that I look at it like a monkey banana relationship. And so
Mhm.
we're all monkeys and we all respond to various bananas,
Mhm.
so it's like, what motivates me? What motivates you? What motivates them? How will they respond in the way we want? Give them the right banana. And,
Mhm.
and in a lot of cases, if you follow the money, you're going to kind of see what's going on. So how has the money impacted what's going on? So I'm kind of hitting it right now
Mhm.
from the kind of the big
Right.
down people.
Mhm.
Um, Again, big food. Let's create food-like substances that are highly addictive, because if they are, and we hit the bliss point, it's called the bliss point, where you get this perfect combination of sugar, salt, fat, but beyond sugar, salt, and fat, you also have all these industrial additives for mouthfeel, taste, texture,
Right.
all of these things that create this, make your eyes roll back in your head in, like, oh my gosh, it's so good. I got to have that again. And that's creates repeat users, and that's good for big food.
Right.
From the politicals, and from, even the, the Academy of Dietetics and so forth, um, you're looking at this all things in moderation, because if big food can just remain a part of something that should be a part of everyone's life, and there's no distinction between it and other things, as long as the nutrients are there, right? As long as the vitamins and minerals and fiber and things are in it, then supposedly it's fine. But they're not taking into consideration, although they're not, but research is taking into consideration the incredible negative impact of ultra processed food.
Yeah, which again, it's, I think I love meta-analysis and seeing the psychosocial. I really, I think that that's so key in people even understanding their own compulsions, their culture and how it's influenced them, the society, and how that really does drive them in some ways. We don't have complete free will. And somebody saying something like moderation when you're being given an addicted substance, you
Yes.
wouldn't say moderation, to somebody who's chemically addicted to heroin or cocaine, where it's immediate that you have
Right.
an addiction, or cigarettes. It's something where you really have to think about what you're saying to somebody. And if that's not going to really work, then it's not going to work at all. The person
Yeah.
can't even grab hold of that when they're under the influence.
Right.
And that shows again, but I think that, but I seeing it all connecting is like, it's not about saying what's bad or what's good,
Right.
capitalism or socialism or
No.
all this.
Right.
It's really about what drives them is
Yes.
for you to consume. The
Right.
more you consume, the more they make the money, the profit, the what.
Sure.
So it's this idea of keep eating, keep drinking, keep medicating, big pharma, big food,
Yeah.
keep going.
Yeah.
Because we need you to just keep going. And I don't feel like keep going, keep consuming. I don't really feel like any of these companies have our best interest in mind. And it is our responsibility. We are not a codependent
Yeah.
group of people like they want us to
Right.
be. We're not victims of this. We can buy food that is still real
Yeah.
if we educate ourselves and understand how this is all connecting, and then make a decision, I think, based on this education. So that's why it's like so important not to just listen to what anyone is suggesting or saying, but really doing the research yourself even, and educating yourself so you can make a decision that gets you out of this loop
Yeah.
where, well, maybe actually moderation is a slight possibility. I mean, I
Yeah.
still don't
But
think playing with fire is good, but
I say, moderation in all things, including moderation.
right.
And so, here's the thing, is that for certain people in certain instances, in certain situations, at certain times of day, in certain places, with a certain ultra processed food, because no one's addicted to chicken breast and broccoli.
Yeah,
No one,
right.
not one
No.
person. And that's real food. And that's just an extreme example. And I'm not saying everybody needs to live on chicken breast and broccoli. Absolutely not. But no one's addicted to that. So we're not addicted to real food.
Mhm.
If someone is addicted or has a compulsive issue with it, that's going to be an ultra processed food.
Yep.
But the distinction isn't made by dietetics and others in that regard. It's they've categorized things as maybe healthier, less healthy, good or bad. I don't.
Yeah.
I really look at
I've even seen, I mean, I got to say, it's like they don't make that differentiation. And I have had a parent tell me that their youngest just gets to eat as much sugar as they want and Doritos and all this stuff because, well, they read that it doesn't matter what you eat when you're younger, as long as like you stop at some point,
yeah,
or, it's, and I said, that really strikes me as ridiculous that you're forming habits when you're younger, if your
yeah.
body can take it, but you're still producing insulin, you still have tooth rot, you still are putting, so can you talk a little bit about that, especially if, I think for parents out there, what you put in your body does affect it at a very deep level. And I think the longer you do it over time, there's got to be something at least they understand about children's bodies, about what it is that we're eating in front of our children, things like that.
All of that matters. It does. So one of the factors, we live in an obesogenic environment. Okay, obesogenic just basically it's all the external and internal factors that contribute to behaviors that increase obesity. You think
Okay.
about it. So, like I said, the messaging's been wrong. Advertising. When's you last time you ever saw asparagus advertised? You don't.
Never.
It's always ultra processed food, right? And then
Mhm.
fast food restaurants, how many? Hundreds of thousands of them. You just look out your door, a few blocks away, you've got one, most often.
Mhm.
Convenience marts, 24/7 access, and so all of these factors are contributing. So as a part of
Mhm.
the the factors that are contributing to obesity is we have parental or guardian modeling. And so
Right.
I have,
Okay.
now I have 3 grown kids. But I'm very empathetic to, and I have 2 grandkids. So we've got, son and daughter-in-law who got our little grandbabies, and they're just precious.
Mhm.
And so I'm kind of back in there, but in grandparent mode now. And
That's
but
better.
it's so it's so much fun. It's so much fun. As my kids say, that is not the person who raised me. That's right. I am not.
Exactly.
And so don't let him fool you. He did not. That is not the person that raised me. But anyway, it matters a lot in raising the kids, and of course seeing the grandkids with our son and daughter-in-law. They listen to us. Kids
Mhm.
do listen, but they see us, and it really matters a lot what we're doing. So the examples that we're doing, what they're seeing us do, and of course what we're giving them as parents
Mhm.
means a great deal and is incredibly impactful to them, more so than even what we say, because they see us and their little brains can at some point process that conflict and go, wait a minute, I hear you, but then I see this. And so it's
Mhm.
just one thing. It's not to put a bunch of pressure on parents. They've got enough pressure. They've got enough craziness in their life with these little rugrats running around,
Mhm.
destroying things. So, you know, um,
But it really good insight, because that's the thing, is that I think some parents get very frustrated with, why don't they do what I say? What's going on? I feel so out of control of my child. And then like, well, not knowing that what you show them and how you show up for yourself and your
yes,
routines, your patterns,
right,
what's like, if you're taking care of your body, you're going to the gym, you're prioritizing health and eating and together, and doing all these things, that is translating into something, even if they're fighting you.
yes,
That's making mind is what I call it. The behavioral foundation is really instrumental to a child's healthy development. Just telling a child or being really hard on them or judgmental or condemning or all the things we say are hypocrite, that
right,
all of those things create conflict for
right.
the child. So it's almost better to kind of hold space for them to fight a little, instead of you being the one that's fighting them so much. But I think we're also teaching them the same type of thing. If we're rewarding ourselves emotionally, and we'll kind of move into this, is like, they see food as a reward. And how else they're not seeing other things as rewards. And it's so easy to get that rewards, 24-hour junk at the convenience store or the fast food, or do you want this thing because you're not feeling, oh, you're scared, so let's go get a chocolate chip cookie, or like, wait a second, why don't we sit with the feeling for a second, wonder why they're scared? What are we scared of? We've now I think because this has been so easy, we're very convenient creatures. We will regress to the lowest common denominator or the easiest path. And this has caused a regression, I think, in mental and emotional health too. That we're not having to figure anything out the hard way, or figure out how to sit with the feeling or talk it through or contain it. As parents, we can just feed it, or we can just give them the entertainment thing. So I find this to be, again, like conditioning them. They're not going to have much of a head start with this stuff when we're not considering it. But coming full circle, having empathy for the parent and
Yes.
or people in general, what is this food doing? I mean, is this food affecting us on a hormonal or emotional, psychological level?
It is. It's affecting us at a genetic level. We were talking a little bit earlier about, supposedly this message that someone put out there, not supposedly, you said it, but I'm just saying, from what you had said about the messaging, where someone said, as long as they're young, whatever, their body will know how to process it and they're all good. If that's the case, then why do we have childhood diabetes off the chart? I mean, childhood diabetes it used to just almost didn't exist. It wasn't a thing. You don't get type 2 diabetes, adult onset diabetes. Type 2 diabetes used to be called adult onset diabetes. They have to take away the adult now because children have it. Wow. And so you've got these diseases that didn't happen until someone was maybe 40, 50, 60, 70 years old, happening in children now. And it's not for nothing. It's not for no reason. It's not that, well, it's all good. It's not all good. If they are over consuming ultra processed food, which I say it that way because I want to make sure that my messaging isn't 100% real food zealot, never eat anything that tastes good ever again, never eat anything that comes out of a package. That's not it. But what's happened is the pendulum has gone way too far the other way. We're sitting at 60 to 90% ultra processed food is what adults in the United States are consuming. 60 to 90% is ultra processed food. Well, what's happened is the real food's gotten crowded out. We want to just start flipping it slowly or quickly, whatever someone's comfortable with, but as fast as you can get to it in a reasonable way for you, the better. You're never going to look back in 50 years, depending on your age. You're not going to look back and go, gosh, what a awful decision that I brought in more real food into my life.
Yeah, that's never going to happen.
Never.
So this is a total win.
Yeah. And so, but the other way, it very much can impact everything from the mental, emotional, energy, physical, autoimmune issues, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, non-alcoholic fatty liver. I mean, it goes on and on. Cancers all go up with increased ultra processed, food consumption. So it matters a lot. And that's at the biggest levels, from that top-down government health educator perspective, they aren't hitting it as hard as they should, because the monkey banana relationship has too much money behind it to say big food is not going to work for you, And here's the thing. We were talking about substance abuse, sometimes, it really is that way, where sometimes, depending on the situation, whatever the case may be, the place, the time, the person, whatever it is, sometimes zero is better than one. Not across the board. And
there's harm reduction, models.
Yeah, it needs to be personalized. And maybe it's something they can have when they're at a restaurant, but they just can't have it in the house.
Hey, absolutely. And this is all part of, adapting to living in a way that's, I think, intelligent, where we're not captive to it. Right. Otherwise, I think that, again, we're not thinking for ourselves. We're really just going along with whatever's available. We're
Yeah.
out. I mean, you have a story about, I think, why don't you tell the story about what your wife asked you? Because I
Yeah.
think this is the non-thinking story. Like when you're just out there doing the thing and
Yeah.
you've been told it's healthy, you're going to Subway.
Yeah. Yeah. So, many years ago now, maybe 20, but somewhere in there, my wife says to me, she goes, "Why are you depressed?" And I was like, "I don't know."
Mm.
But I also knew that she was right. I knew what I felt. I knew how I had been. And it wasn't like all the time, always blue, always down, always whatever. It wasn't at that level, but just too many moments of, ugh, felt the black cloud hanging over me,
Yeah.
And I said, I don't know. I mean, wife good, kids good, house good, money was fine, had everything we needed, wasn't missing anything, wasn't that. It was like this inexplicable thing. And I actually didn't fully realize it till later that
Mm.
for me, this eat whole wheat, have the low fat, chicken flubber that you might get, it's processed, get the, the sliced deli flubber, whatever that is, that's processed. And then at the end, get the baked Lays, processed, and then have the Diet Coke processed. That even though the calories were low, and even though it kind of had the appropriate words on the front end for marketing, whole wheat, low fat, high in protein, whatever,
Yeah.
high in calcium, high, all the buzzwords on the front of the label marketing stuff. It had all that stuff. And bodybuilding background, I could get to 5 or 6% body fat eating that stuff. Now, not
Wow.
all the time, not 24/7, but I
Yeah.
could incorporate that in and still get in shape enough to have, the six pack and the da 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 da. So it didn't even stop me from getting lean. So in my head, I'm like, works.
Right.
Except it wasn't working, and I didn't know what was going on. And it wasn't until I went, what is going on, that I went, well, it can't be that. It can't be that is what's causing my
Mhm.
issue. So I switched to real food. I just
You
got
said
went,
it can't be that, but then you're like intuitively, your
yeah,
body knows what it needs.
right.
I love that example because there is an inner wisdom and definitely attempts to heal that we are just overriding
Yeah,
with our cognitive,
I know.
illusions, right?
And I knew that I'd worked with clients who were sensitive, who had
Mhm.
experienced other sensitivities to ultra processed food, maybe mentally, maybe physically, maybe emotionally, whatever.
Mm.
But for me, I had been fine, you know, and I went, well, me, I'm gonna need to switch over to, real food. And anyway, I did it. And
Mhm.
what do you know, 3, 4, 5 days later, clouds part, there's a blue sky up there.
Wow.
Oh, come on. You just had a good day. You had a good sale. Your wife was nicer to you on a day. Something happened in life that was just good, and you're in a better mood because of whatever. Okay. And I went, okay, well, let's just go back to we'll call it the Subway lifestyle. I'm just using that just metaphorically.
Yeah.
Um, 3, 4 days into it, here it comes. I was like, you got to be kidding me. All right, maybe I'm gluten intolerant. Maybe that's what it is. I'm going to get rid of gluten. That's a
Oh,
thing. Let's get
yeah.
rid of gluten. So I got rid of gluten, but kept processed stuff. All right. Guess what? Sad,
Yeah.
depressed, and then I went, oh, come on. All right, you know what? I seem to be sensitive to caramel color. Let's just get rid of caramel color because that's a nasty ingredient. Let's do
Yeah.
caramel color. I got rid of all caramel color. And that was good for me, but I was still, nope. It was like,
Mhm.
okay, Dave, I did this like 6 times. I was like, I resisted it. I
Yeah.
resisted it because I was like, really? The answer was yes,
Yes.
really. And when I did it, and now that I'm 90% real food, I flipped the whole thing. Not that I was 90% processed before, but
Yeah.
being just what I do and stuff, but I'm at 90% real food. And here's the thing too, and this is just a personal story for me. I didn't know. And I
Mhm.
feel bad that I had the moods that I did. Not that I was a rage. I wasn't that. I was just
Yeah.
had too many periods of down, you know,
Mhm.
to be fun, to be around a lot, this kind of stuff. And I feel bad that it would have had any kind of an impact. And because I just didn't know. I mean, I was really clueless that it was it. But here's the thing. Now that I know,
Mhm.
I just, it's like, it's a no negotiation with myself,
Right.
where I'm like, I could, but I won't do that. I won't have me not be my best mental, emotional self for those around me that I love, that I'm with, that I interact with.
Mhm.
And then, of course, for myself. And with that being the case, that's another motivator, one of many, but another motivator for why, I recommend it to everybody, but also that for me specifically, why you're going to find me eating 90% or so real food.
Right. There's you regain, I think you heal a relationship with yourself, with others, but really it is a relationship with your body, and recognizing, wow, this is a serious connection here. I mean, as we talk about, I think obesogenic environment, that's a very interesting term, and definitely a reality, but also a depression, stress. We also have incredible numbers of depression, more than anything, and how that correlates to, I mean, your story, I think it, people are in such resistance to thinking that their mind is connected to their body, that these things that they're I guess are approved to serve us are somehow, then therefore it's good, and we're just trusting all of this. But people have come to this, whether it's through Crohn's, depression, stress, cancer, that your diet has to change.
Yeah.
Anyone in a disease state or a disordered state has to do what first? First, not see a psychiatrist. I mean, not see a psychologist, not try to just, oh, well, let's just talk about it. No, actually, they really have to go in at the physical level first. And the first thing they address is food. So it's like they know, but don't know. And it's like, we're saying we understand this, but people aren't taking this as seriously when it comes to their mental health. And I know for a fact it has direct correlation. And if you're not, and you want everything just to be resolved just by talking or expressing the feeling, but you want to leave your body out, there's going to be something that's very much missing from your work, and your relationship with your body is integral to actually feeling like a whole person, real, embodied, healthy, vital, able to handle. And we're kind of going to move to emotional fitness a little bit, but able to handle what it takes to navigate adulthood. This is not an easy, it's not an easy thing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of struggle. There's a lot of challenges. There's suffering, and we need to be able to show up for it. But like you said, in the state of depression, again, we can't really see past that fog. The fog is real. It's a real phenomenon. It's not like, oh, I'm putting the fog there.
No.
Or I'm putting the stress there, I'm putting the anger there. But if you're doing this all day, you're surviving. You're not able to really think about how to show up. So, I mean, it's not like a quick fix, but I definitely know this is a place to start. And that's why I want to know is, like, how have you seen your clients wake up to this reality? Because I'm sure you have to present it at some point that, I mean, the emotional part of this and how they've gotten so caught up is what's still perpetuating, the body composition problems or the obesity problem that they're trying to, because some people do come at it just for weight loss and find out that it's emotional. I'm talking about people coming to me for the emotional stuff and saying, hey, it's in your body.
Yeah.
So,
well, one of the things that I will commonly say is, first of all, our country is in a mental health crisis right now. Now we are maybe still in it at the tail end. We've all gone through this pandemic that is just shaking us, everything to its core. We're in a different society socially now. We're in this and that and the next thing. And I get that. Those things all contribute. It's all contributory. And I get that, just the world that we're living in. But the other thing is that with ultra processed food being where it is now, and seeing how powerful it is. And again, I'm an N of one, in research, an N of one, I'm one person. I'm not a research study. I'm just for myself. But there are plenty of research studies where it isn't an N of one. It's tens or hundreds of thousands in the study, where they show that those who consume the most ultra processed food have the lowest scores for depression, I mean, lowest scores meaning depression is the worst, or you can say
Right.
highest scores for depression, whichever way you want to say it. But depression's the worst, anxiety is the worst, dementia is
Yes.
the worst, cognition's the worst, on and on and on. There's nothing positive in any research. When you look at meta-analyses, especially, there's nothing positive for the highest consumers of ultra-processed food. Nothing. Not one thing goes, well, they did better when. And so for what I say to people all the time is, if, first of all, I stay in my lane and I don't try to be a psychologist or a psychiatrist. I always tell people, it doesn't mean we can't talk, but once it sometimes gets to a certain point, I'm going to refer them out and say, hey, I think it might be a good idea. You talk to someone, start there. But what I
Absolutely.
say too is, you're going to handicap your psychologist, psychiatrist, physician, whoever. You're going to handicap them if you go in basically under the influence of ultra processed food. They start trying to either talk therapy through it, which it's a different person communicating because they're under the influence.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not as clear. And then if drugs are involved to try to help, SSRIs or whatever, they're adding that on top of all the chemicals and everything going on from the ultra processed food. And it's really a mess for medicine to try to figure out. You're really handicapping the medical professionals if you don't come at it as clear as you can, and again, just as reasonably real food oriented as you can, so that you can see, like, what's my brain like? What are my emotions like? What's my anxiety like? What's my depression like? What is everything I think I'm seeing like when I'm not under the influence of ultra processed food? I mean, if you wake up in your morning as Lucky Charms, and then lunch is fast food, and then dinner is pizza, and then there's a snack after or whatever, I wouldn't put anything past, that being the causative for mental, emotional, physical problems that are going on. It may not be, but I wouldn't say that it's not, and we won't know until you shift it. So I don't think I
100%. And but I think that that's where, again, people come to the table and say, that, I mean, a lot of times people are aware of conflicts that they're having in their lives. Beyond that, they're really aware of relational issues, professional issues where they want to be in their lives, but they're not bringing this in as, but look at what it is, that you are what you eat.
Yeah.
And there is something about, like you said, like there's words for, like, the turkey flubber, like if you're getting a processed foods, I mean, that isn't human.
Yeah.
Right. There isn't anything, protein for protein. It's there, and your body can turn protein into a carbohydrate if you're under certain stress. And there's a lot of things that chemically that are happening that you don't understand, or hormonally, that are suppressing testosterone. So now it's time to wake up. It is definitely time to start educating ourselves. But then what do we sit with? Like, that's the thing. It's like, I think also a phenomenon of, I think a lot of young adults and THC. I just want to be happy and free and get through this transition. And, there's a part of that hides them from the reality of adulthood level emotions, where you're really on your own to figure some of these things out, or on your own and need to learn how to ask for help. But a lot of, again, what are you not under influence? If you're under influence, you're not really dealing with the full thing. And it is making it more difficult for you, for anybody that you go to. And starting with thinking about what you're putting in your body on every level, and how you're treating it is all, in some ways, whether we are conscious of it or not, has to be addressed to get to the place where we can really organize our experience and start to build up. I think, like, that's where I think is, like, people seem to be pretty frightened of their emotions in America, where they're like, oh, a feeling, oh my gosh, can't have that feeling, got to just be nice, got to be okay, got to, like, avoid that. Like, what's the big deal about feeling? We're doing all this stuff to stuff it, to suppress it, to defend against it, to medicate it. Like, it's a feeling, like, it's like a feeling, like lactic acid in your muscles. there's got to be something there where we can't strengthen our ability to understand a feeling or to contain it or to process it or to use it as information, anything that we would usually do for it to be a functional experience. We're not, if we're not working in that area.
Yeah, it's so true. You were talking a bit earlier about, kids and things. You can back up to pre-pregnancy, and because of epigenetics, we're
Yeah.
seeing. I just read a study the other day and it was on the anxiety-inducing effects of aspartame. And
Wow.
so again, not to single out a component, because it's not like, well, aspartame's the thing. No, it's just in my head, it's just ultra processed, period. Ultra processed. And so, and at some point, I probably should give at least my working definition of real food, so people are like, what's he talking about? I mean, I think people will think they know, but maybe I should give that definition. But
Yeah.
so aspartame, in the study, because it goes back to like, when does it influence kids? Going back to your original, the person that said to you, they're fine as long as. What they're finding, and I'm only laughing because it's so ridiculous. It's like, oh my gosh, ridiculous. That's why it kind of made me do that chuckle. So they found that this was a mouse study, not a human study, but what they did is they looked at how much aspartame they give the mice. How would that translate? Because it doesn't translate equally to a human, obviously. Mice can't take nearly as much, and so on and so on. They gave the equivalent of what would be 2 8-ounce diet sodas of aspartame to the mice per day. Anxiety went up, but something that they really found surprising, they didn't know it was going to happen, is that it was actually heritable, this anxiety, from the paternal side of.
Interesting.
So when the
Right.
father, the male, consumed aspartame at X amount for a certain amount of time and experienced this anxiety, his genes changed. Those genes were passed on, and the offspring ended up with this difference in genes that made them more susceptible to anxiety. They'd never consumed aspartame in their life.
That's incredible.
So this stuff just, as the more research comes out and you start looking at all of the ways that because I used to say this, I've actually had to change my language regarding genes, because one of the things I would say is, gee, why are we 43% obese today and we were only 15% obese in 1970? Did our genes change in 50 years?
Yeah.
Well, my normal response up until just a little bit ago would have been, no. Our genes, it takes a long time for our genes to change, for us to evolutionarily change and have our genes change. I don't believe that. I mean, maybe broadly, but in certain instances, they can change quickly. And we're finding that through research like this, where you're like, the father, the male, passed it on to the offspring. And that was just from X consumption for X period of time. It changed his genes. It got passed on. It made the offspring more susceptible. That's happening to our kids now. That's happened to our kids. They're being born, some because of ultra processed food and obesity, and it's resulting obesity, I should say. Some things are being passed on to kids who never did anything at all.
Yeah. I mean, it would be so interesting to take a study like that into humans, because the evidence is already in the kids. Like you said, the evidence is already there in the increase in obesity, but young children needing therapy or to deal with like extreme anxiety, people are making excuses for it. But the amount of homework they have or the pressures they have, but they also have so much done for them, given to them, support everywhere, but still there's this uptick in really extreme levels of anxiety that can't really be explained, but why this child's just really anxious and takes everything super seriously. Well, why? When, the situation seems pretty supportive and pretty cool. I mean, like, I don't even see any trauma here. I see nothing except for the child is predisposed to some high intense level of anxiety. And that is so much more prevalent than we've ever seen before. So it makes, I mean, Gen X is a Diet Coke
Yeah,
group of parents,
right.
for sure. But I mean, this isn't, to me, it's not necessarily, armchair interpreting. I think what it is really trying to make sense
Yeah,
of our experience without making excuses,
right.
and really using science to understand like what's going on, because it's not in these companies' interests
No,
to, like, they're not going to do the research. I mean, I don't think Camel cigarettes did the research or whatever. It's just at some point that was too much evidence to the
yeah.
contrary, to just continue to support that this is an okay thing just to advertise and promote. So maybe food is going to get there, but I think in so many ways the damage that's being done emotionally is a real real issue. And when somebody comes to you, I wonder, how do you address this? I mean, I know not out of your scope, but
Sure.
like, is there any sort of practices that you help them start to
Yeah.
consider around these changes and what they need to do?
Yeah. It's education, and it's education that where the monkey banana relationship for me is I want my clients to succeed. Okay.
Mhm.
I want them to succeed. I want them to win. That is a reward for me in and of itself. Okay. Compensation, secondary. I know it may sound weird, but that's very secondary to I want them to win.
Mhm.
So the information I'm going to give them isn't tied to I hope they buy my Lucky Charms. It's like I want them to move in
Mhm.
a direction that research is supporting, that in the real world, boots on the ground, decades of doing this, that I'm seeing in real people, and of course myself and family, whoever, where you're impacted mentally, physically, and everything else, from changing, what we eat. So we're going to educate in the right way. What is real food? So my adaptation to real food comes from a professor who developed the Nova food classification system out of Brazil.
Okay.
Nova food classification system. Okay. And there are a number of food classification systems. One of the most recent US food classification systems, just as an aside, put Lucky Charms as being healthier than red meat. So anyway, we've got a ways to go here. So, and again, they didn't distinguish whether it was grass fed or anything else, just period. Lucky Charms would have a better nutrient score overall. Okay. So that's good. I'm going to call that ridiculous. But anyway,
Mhm.
my adaptation of the Nova food classification system has real food being this.
Mhm.
Um, Real food is whole or minimally processed edible parts of plant and animal.
Right.
Okay. Where, and here's the important part, if anything's been added to it, it's whole or minimally processed ingredients commonly found in kitchens. So I don't care if it's got 50 ingredients. Don't care. It could have 47 different spices. Great.
Mhm.
Fine with me. So it's not about, you hear sometimes if it's got more than 5 ingredients, don't eat it. You know, just as
Ah.
a loose definition of what's good.
No, that's actually, those are good for people in general, like general little things to kind of keep in their
Right.
mind, looking at.
So it's like, I don't care if it's got 50 ingredients. I don't care. Someone will say, don't eat it if you can't pronounce it. Well,
Mhm.
quinoa is kind of a weird word, and so I don't know, and I don't blame anybody if they can't pronounce quinoa when they first see it. But that doesn't mean that it's not okay. So I don't care if you can pronounce it. I care with respect to it being real food, if it's whole or minimally processed edible parts of plant and animal, where if anything's been added, it's only
Mhm.
whole or minimally processed ingredients commonly found in kitchens. What's commonly found in kitchens? Spices,
Mhm.
vinegar,
Oils.
oils,
Yeah.
right? And then you can get into some other things. Now, does it mean that flours that are commonly found in kitchens are all perfectly fine? If you're making it at home, you're probably going to do better, but it's still pretty processed. That flour is, especially the modern flour. You can find flours that aren't as processed, unbromated, and so forth, but you got to look for them. And
Mhm.
then, added sugars and that kind of stuff. But that's where we start getting the nuance and splitting hairs. Here's the thing: is that working definition, fits really well. And so
Mhm.
someone comes and they've got these things going on. Well, we want to meet them where they are. If this is
Yeah.
someone who is eating what I just described, Lucky Charms for breakfast, fast food, and then blah, 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 and it's all ultra processed, what we're not going to do is say, and now you need to eat like Dave Greenwalt starting tomorrow.
Yeah.
you know, Hurry up. No. What we're going to do is educate on the things you and I are talking about here, and then just, take that times 10 as far as making sure they know this isn't, all things in moderation has gotten us here, because it doesn't consider whether it's a substance of abuse, which it
Right.
very well could be, not for everybody and not in every situation, and not, but it could be for you in this and this and this. You add these other factors. So
Yeah.
we will start to explore, where are the areas that you are falling down? Where are the areas where, once I've taught you the nutrition and let's say the movement, activity, exercise components, those are your kind of your two, energy in, energy out, right? The mechanical things. Those
Right.
are the things that are calories in, calories out, eat less, exercise more, right? So that once we've got that really covered, and you really know, like, oh, okay, it's food isn't food. There's real food, and there's okay. And then you start moving in these other areas. We've got 15 nutrition principles all in. That's it. It's only
Okay.
15. So it takes a little bit, and you get in there, and it doesn't take long for them to see what's going on. But let's say they've got that. Well,
Okay.
then we are going to look at if they have a strong why, what's driving their willpower, because it's the why power that drives the willpower. So if they've got a strong why driving them, we help them develop that. Then we are going to look at what specific instances are we struggling with? Because the thing is, people don't struggle all the time in every single way. When they struggle, if they're struggling to maintain the good behaviors that are going to get us moving in the direction we want to move, it's a certain situation, time of day, place, and thing that repetitively you can just put out. Maybe there's 5 or 6 of these little devils out there for any person, maybe a few more, whatever, maybe a few less, but it isn't 50 different things they fall down with.
Yeah.
It's like 5 or 6. And it's always, oh, it's right when I get home from work, or it's every time I have a little argument with the spouse, I go catastrophic. It's the end of my life. I'm never, I'm going to live, I'm going to be homeless living under a bridge. I don't know why. You just had an argument with your spouse. It's going to be okay. It's not, let's bring it down, And so we're going to address that and kind of see what is that, and all right, and how can we better manage that? So that's where the emotional fitness comes in, because to me, the way we approach it is, emotional fitness goal is at least a couple of facets. One, have people feeling authentically good more often,
Right.
instead of regretfully good. That regretfully good stuff is, it felt good in the moment, but then I regretted it big time later.
Yeah.
Retail therapy, $500 spent. Oh, I didn't have $500. Now I got $500 on my credit card. Ugh, felt good when I did it, but now I regret it.
Yeah, or programs where they aren't addressing this underlying layer. I will say there's a lot of self-help out there to spend this money, and you can do this, you can do that, but they're not addressing the emotional layer that again, where is your big why? Your why has the power to will.
Yeah.
And I think that people don't recognize that, that whatever that is a pattern, and it can be a tract. People love to, one of the defenses is just become completely like excuse oriented, like every time is brand new. Like, that's not very integrated. That's not, maybe this is a different circumstance, but it definitely is exactly like this last one.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people don't recognize that, people understand stress eating, but they don't hear what they're saying to themselves, or anger eating or emotional eating. They don't hear what they're saying to themselves to grab that cookie, to grab that thing. They're not hearing that, oh, I'm not going to make it through this without this thing.
Right.
I need this to emotionally calm me down from the sacrifice I'm making right now, or the emotion I'm having to deal with in the moment. And
It's so true. And you reminded me, I just saw this study 2 weeks ago, and you're just talking about, we'll call it comfort eating. Just because everybody knows what that is. When we eat comfort eating, we're not doing chicken breasts and broccoli. Okay. So comfort eating is going to be ultra processed food of some kind, almost 100% of the time. Okay. These researchers with humans looked at, all right, let's stress them. Now, I'm not saying it's identical to life stress, but they stressed them in the lab. They stressed them. They put them under stress, and they were able to measure it with cortisol and heart rate and blood pressure and all these things.
yeah.
And then they said, comfort, you can have comfort foods, which is ultra processed junk. And it was like cookies and chips or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And they gave a group comfort. All right. And then they measured over an hour and other time periods, but let's just say the hour for this purpose. How did they recover from the stress? How did they recover from that stressful event? All measurable. And so they looked at that group, and then they looked at a group that ate like baby carrots and snap peas and cucumbers, as an example, or strawberries. Okay. So they still ate, but they ate real food. And then they looked at a group who did nothing. They just had to sit with it. Okay. They didn't get to eat. They stressed them and they just made them sit with it, and they didn't give them cognitive behavioral therapy strategies. They just had to sit with it. Right. So they looked at it, and statistically, there was no difference between the groups in recovery an hour later. No difference at all. So the group that did comfort eating had no measurable benefit an hour after the incident compared to the group that ate real food, or even compared to the group that ate nothing.
Right.
So it's like, here's the thing: we get so, it's not me, but I've referred to it as conditioned automated response, right? CA.
Yes.
Right. And it's like this. It's like that happens, and it's like a light switch. It's like, this is what I do. That happens, I do this. There's not even a half a second between the thing and the thing, the stimulus and the response, as we would say, right?
Right.
And so what we do by working a lot, 80-90% of my coaching, Bianca, is not in the nutrition exercise space. It's like, I can get that out of the way in an hour.
Right.
Then
Pretty
the rest of the days and weeks and however long I'm working with a client is all on compulsive eating, to see if there is, and if so, how do we address that, appropriately. And then emotional fitness, and of course the why, but emotional fitness, so that we can help the person grow and get stronger emotionally, so that they're better life managers, so that when occurs, there's a space, just a small space, where they can choose a different response. One of my original mentors, and I'm sure it's not new, but when I first heard it, I was like, it was like 25 years ago. His name was Zig Ziglar, and he was a personal growth guy.
Yeah.
And, I love Zig. So he's
He's
passed
great.
on now, but he used to tell the story about, when something is working for us, we respond to it, but we think of something that's not working for us as having a reaction to it. So when it comes to medicine, is kind of how he was drawing that, analogy. So we want to be able to respond without overreacting. And we're better able to do that when I'll just use a phrase I use, when we grow in this emotional fitness space to where we're more like a lifestyle ninja. It's like, I think of it like, whatever comes my way, I've got to be able to say, I'm going to pull that strategy because I need that one right now. But I need this one for the different other strategy. And I need this one. It's like, you're doing all these martial arts moves in life where you've got the skills. And if I'm being honest, I drew my inspiration for that from a client of mine who was a plastic surgeon.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And she had told me one time that when she was new and just come out of residency, she was given a trauma patient that had been involved in a bad accident. So there was a lot of disfigurement and And I'm just blown away by what people can do. I really am. I'm in awe at what people can do that I wouldn't have know the first thing, about how to do. And so I said to her, how did you know? I mean, this person was a mess, and now you're the one, you've got to try to help them, whatever. I said, how did you even know where to start? And she said, it was all the principles that we were taught. She goes, yes, we were shown. And then we had to do hands-on, do this, suture this, cut this, tuck this, move this, all the things that you have to do, that a surgeon has to do in that field.
Right.
But she wasn't taught specifically that case. She had to be able to use all of the principles and tools and strategies and education in all of its different forms and put it all together so that she could help this patient and make it work. And I see emotional fitness a little bit like that, where it's like, there's so many different situations that any of us are going to be faced with. I can't say, and here in chapter 16 on page 48,
That's right.
Is when this exact thing happens, I got it right here. This is what you do. So we have to have kind of principles, and we have to have the foundation so that we can bring the emotional temperature down, so that we can decatastrophize, reduce those catastrophics.
100%.
We can reframe, we can change perspective a little easier, and kind of breathe and go, we're going to be okay.
Yeah. And make that choice that okay is where you want to be. Like Zig Ziglar said, that response is when, that's when things are good. And we got to get back to that place. But that's actually something similar to what I called it emotional warrior, because lifestyle ninja, I was thinking about emotional ninja too, because I think about, codependency and the pressures that emotional mindset of living from the outside in, always about the other, always about pleasing and satisfying and caring and taking care of other people and other people's feelings, and always putting yourself second, how that ends up actually being like the surgeon that knows all the principles, that you understand emotions inside and out. To be honest, I mean, you are really proficient at curing everybody else's stuff, helping clean up everybody else's mess, fixing them. But can you do it for yourself?
Right.
Can you do that? And then that's where I think you become like you have these skills. Now we do need to, though I don't think that it's taught to us in any way, shape, or form, actually how, I know this is like a little bit of a stretch, but how to think for ourselves. We learn to think about others in a sympathetic way, or survive our situation if it's traumatic. I understand that we're using our minds in a specific way, but that whole idea of understanding processes and educating ourselves and using those processes to be adaptive and responsive in a situation, that's a skill set that I don't really think, I mean, that's what I call thinking. And I don't know where I would have learned that if I did not, I was raised in an environment that was a little bit more along those lines already, but I really had to learn how to think through all of my education. That was part of becoming a psychoanalyst. I mean, you understand the mind and the processes of it, but how do you apply it? That's not something that we regurgitate. That's not memorized. This isn't memorized. This is from life experience, along with academic study and application in working with people. So, we're both coming from this place where I think at least I'll speak for myself, is I really want people to understand that when you are working on bettering yourself, we can think about our lives in compartments, whether that's financial, professional, or in our family, in our relationships, but it's a holistic experience. And humans need wholeness, whole food, whole experiences, wholly recognize that they are not just parts that act and so, robotically and so habitually, without thinking about it. That's gonna lead to disaster for us. And a lot of pain that we could avoid with, and I'm such a proponent, and I think that's why our conversation lasts as long as it did, of education. Because I'm learning as I'm listening to you and thinking and wanting to, have this conversation, because I'm still so curious about what all of this means, and why, instead of it being a drop in the bucket, I think education can really affect people on a larger scale instead of us doing one-on-one. So
absolutely. And the thing is that this isn't emotional fitness, that is, and all of this isn't like eye color where we can't change it. We really can grow it. It is like a muscle. And if we learn the elements of it, and we say, oh, so focus and gratitude and control and compassion and sleep to me is a part of emotional fitness, because let's face it, you give me several days in a row of 5 hours or less sleep, and I'm under a laundry basket sucking my thumb, I don't know what I'm doing.
With you.
But I mean, all the factors that go into, helping us to better manage this craziness that is life and is going to be life,
Mhm.
where we can take it a little bit more in stride, where we can bring the temperature down. We can, again, just respond more to things that happen and create that just enough space where it changes from I must eat or whatever the thing is that you're doing,
Right.
drink, whatever it is, to wait a minute, just breathe a minute,
Mhm.
literally count to 10 and say, and sometimes that's enough.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes in that moment, that's enough where you just needed 10 seconds. So you just needed a minute. You just needed something. And then you find that you end up, of course, without regret an hour later.
Mhm.
You're glad you did it. But getting to that place is, like you said, it's not a magic quick fix. Each person has to be addressed individually. You got to see where they're at, see what's going on. But I want to make sure that people do know that I have great hope from coming at it
Mhm.
from this more broad, holistic view, because
Yeah.
we're not just saying personal responsibility, eat less, exercise more. That's
That's
just
not going to work.
That just doesn't work. And
Mhm.
where's your evidence that it doesn't work? 43% obese.
Mhm.
That's been the message. Personal responsibility. So here's the thing too, is that since we can't rely on top down,
Right.
government, big institutions, we've got to go bottom up. And here's the thing is that as people, and they are little podcasts, little people like me, little whatever, and then bigger ones that are bigger influencers and have, million followers and 10 million followers, whatever they've got. Some
Mhm.
messaging is getting out there about this. Not all food's the same. Ultra processed food is nasty,
Mhm.
especially cumulatively. I'm not saying somebody has a one-off, and it's 10% of their intake, the body can't handle it, and it's going to be. I'm not saying that. But
Right.
when it's 90% of your intake, it's nasty, and it's going to be nasty. And this is not something that we as a society are going to be able to sustain. You know,
No,
it's
not
going to
without
break.
right, not without serious, yes, a consequence. And now I think people are recognizing, and again, there's always consequence. There's emotional consequence to not communicating. There's physical consequence to not taking care of your body.
Yeah.
There is a consequence that is much worse than the what you were trying to avoid in doing the hard work or making a bit of a mess there or changing your ways and having to deal with it. It's like for the short term difficulty, we get long-term gains. And instead, they don't go into the short-term difficulty of communicating what they feel with their partner, or showing up for their kids in a different way, or whatever the hard thing is. Then it makes a huge mess down
Yeah.
the road. So I'm like, what do you rather clean up? Small mess, big mess.
Yeah.
And this is our, in some ways, yes, this is our body, this is our territory, it's ours, it's our mind. It is our responsibility to educate ourselves. The information is there. So I'm really excited to have met you and to have had this conversation. I think that, how would people get in touch with you if they wanted to
Sure.
start this journey?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just keep it real simple. Leanness lifestyle is kind of a mouthful. So we just have the website as lluniversity.com.
Got it.
And that'd be the best place. Any social links, if somebody needs to get a hold of us, then they can do it through there.
Through there.
But
Okay.
that'd be the best place.
Right. And I'll put it in the show notes too, or in the description as well.
Sure.
But thank you so much. And we can maybe have a part two,
Yeah, I'm
catching up
totally up for it.
on
Yeah.
research and the latest data. That is really helpful.
Yeah. No, it's been a lot of fun. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I will put this out there very shortly.